My dad claims to have hit some kind of monster with his car. He was in his early 20s and lived on his parents' farm in rural Australia in the 1970s. Him and his brother were driving back to the property late at night on a dirt road through a wooded area. He claims a 3-meter tall skinny creature that was completely white and humanoid looking sprinted out of the trees impossibly fast towards them. It hit their bonnet and went over their car, and he put emphasis that it was completely unnaturally white. Like, not skin white, but white paint white. They just fucking gunned it and got out of there as fast as they could, and they didn't look back. They get back to the farm, and their bonnet is completely fucked up, crushed in and covered in blood. They went back with their dad in the morning with a rifle, and there was blood streaked down the road, but no body. He swore on his life that this happened until the day he died, and he was a pretty smart and reasonable dude. I kinda have to believe him. Be last Christmas, driving to girlfriend's house 6 hours away. Decide to leave at midnight so we can surprise the family. Be me, girlfriend, and her sister and sister's boyfriend, all inside the car. Driving along at around 3 a.m. Everyone is asleep except me. Middle of rural Texas, no towns or anything for miles. See car on side of road with hazards on. Decide to call the cops, just in case the guy needs help. Right as I pull out my phone, I see some guy walking down the side of the road. Start slowing down to see if he needs help. Getting closer, and I now see that this dude is at least 7 feet tall. Start feeling a bit antsy. Wake everyone up just to help calm my nerves a bit. Getting closer and realize it's walking on all fours, almost like a skinny ape. Girlfriend yells at me to just keep going and call the police. Agree, but I really want to get a better look at this thing. Get down to about 5 miles per hour and about to pass by it. All of us look over and realize its face is human. It turns over to look at us. Its face is uncanny valley as fuck, almost iRobot looking. All of us scream and I slam my foot on the gas. It whips its 5-foot long arm at the car and clips the back. Speed the fuck out of there. See it galloping towards us. Lose him in about a minute, but the girls in the car are crying, and me and the other guy are both freaking out. Finally call the cops and tell them what happened. Say they would go check it out, but I never found out what happened with that. It still scares me when I think about it. I take a completely different route to get there now, just to avoid that damn stretch of road. I really wish the damn cops had gotten back to me after they figured out what happened. After they figured out what happened, they heard your report and went, fuck that. Here's one from living in rural South Carolina. I've got more if you would like to hear. This happened a few years ago when I was a community college student and still dating my now wife. I lived at my parents' house at the time in a rural area of upstate South Carolina. The area we lived in was rural, but not terribly sparsely populated. Our road had houses every few hundred feet, with thick bands of trees between them. Most of the roads in the region were similar to this, houses every so often with thick forest interspersed regularly. We lived 5 minutes from the closest town, however. My college and girlfriend's residence were in a larger town, about 40 minutes away by the fastest route. This route was along just 3 of those sparsely populated roads, one after the other. Driving on this route would take you first to another small town, around 20 minutes away, and then after 15 to 20 more, to the larger city where my college was. If you were heading to the college, the first 10 minutes of your drive were guaranteed to be down a twisting, dark, and often empty road, with long stretches between clusters of houses. This road had an official name that can be found on a map. However, I'll call it what it was designated by the locals: Snake Road. It's called that because of its winding nature. There were a few low spots along this road where, at night, it became particularly dark and hard to see, and sometimes foggy. In one of those low spots, there was an area I always felt odd driving through, even in the daylight. If you looked out the window, the trees and underbrush were fairly sparse, but at the same time, impossible to see more than a few meters into. It was almost as if the light was twisted and distorted by all of the branches and vines. At night, the only visibility would come from my headlights, which were fortunately bright. They were modern ones that could illuminate several hundred feet in front of the car on most roads. But in this low-lying area, for reasons I never understood, The light could never penetrate more than 70 or 80 feet into the thick shadows. One night, I had stayed late at my girlfriend's house after class, as usual. I had tucked her in and was heading home in my car. At this point, everything was fine. I had a full tank of gas, my lights were in good condition, and I had some good CDs to listen to help me stay awake on my drive home. Although it was a long drive in daylight with normal traffic, at night, I could speed, so usually I would make it home a good bit faster. However, this reward of being in bed sooner came with the price of, potentially, running into deer or other nocturnal animals, which frequently crossed the roads at night. Deer were particularly threatening, as they are large enough here that, if you strike them at any pace higher than a crawl, they will destroy your lights, radiator, bumper, and perhaps even parts of your engine or windshield. I had seen a deer jump into another car and shatter its window as a child, so I fully understood the threat and made sure to be as observant as possible when speeding home. I hastily drove out of the outskirts of the city where she lived and began to drive into the countryside. I watched as all the familiar turns passed me by. Because I was still so close to the city, many houses still had their lights on, and I had passed a few cars. It was a typical night drive, and my biggest worries were a stray deer or sheriff's deputy. However, neither of these were particularly prescient at the moment, because on the wide, well-maintained roads near the city, my bright headlights made it easy for me to see along any stretch or curve, as well as several feet off to either side of the road. I have just spent so long narrating this, and so far all we know is that this road is dark. That's it. My God. Okay. After around 15 minutes, I reached a small town that marked the midpoint of my darkened commute. I rode through the stop sign in the middle of town and continued out into the countryside. I was making good time, and nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Yet. However, I had to become more reliant on my lights, as the small town marked the end of the wide, well-maintained highway, and the start of a narrower, darker portion, mostly surrounded by trees, farms, and the odd church, instead of neighborhoods, gas stations, and stores. The next 5 minutes of my drive were uneventful enough. At this point, I was nearly on autopilot, singing along to an old Midnight Oil CD, and watching my odometer tick onwards. Look, I'm really not trying to be an asshole with this, but he's really making this sound like he's a trucker, driving for the next 14 hours straight. It's a 40-minute drive. Anyway, I'm just being an ass. After a long straight section where there were wide cleared sections on either side, where the grass ran to meet the forest hundreds of feet away from the road, I rounded the last bend and came up upon my second to last turn. The turn onto Snake Road. I slowed down, as the junction with Snake Road was marked by a sharp hairpin, where the ground dipped away swiftly on either side. Taking the turn too fast would send you careening into the ditch, a sign of the nature of the test of the road. As I turned, I followed the first steep, winding descent into a low-lying area, with several farms in the vicinity. I had seen many deer in this area before, as they fed on the crops, and my headlights were also beginning to lose their piercing edge, as I mentioned previously. At this point, I had slowed down to around 45 miles per hour, as I knew a slower pace was preferable to striking a deer and having to walk to find signal just to call my parents. The road led up on another hill past a large white house, and dipped once more into the darkest pit of the road. This was the area I mentioned earlier, where even daylight was hazy and unreliable. Coming around the downward curve into the bottom, I was on a shorter straightaway, before a long left-hander into a longer straight, and then a hill. It was here that I had my encounter. I saw movement up ahead, at the very end of the straight, before it turned to the left. I instinctively slowed the car, as hitting a deer at 45 is enough to do serious damage. As I approached, I saw what I thought was a deer walking off of the road. I could see the vague shape of its head and antlers, as well as my lights reflecting from its eyes. But something was wrong. The deer's head was too low to the ground. Deer will frequently lower their heads to graze, so this isn't unusual, but if they're grazing, their mouths will face downwards. This deer was almost lying on the ground, moving, and looking at me. Okay, I thought to myself, it's a scavenger probably dragging away some roadkill. But as I approached, this was clearly not the case. I saw another set of eyes turn to look at me. Deer's eyes are big and green at night in headlights, because they reflect the color green. I'm gonna look this up. That sounds like a really stupid sentence. According to my Google search, it says deer and elk's eyes shine white, while moose eyes tend to shine red. Rabbits have also red. Other mammals, such as horses, may have blue, and the eyes of foxes, domestic cats, and dogs usually shine green. So either this guy's wrong. Hold on. Let's go to Reddit, because, these guys are geniuses. This is a fucking video game subreddit. I'm so off course here. I don't care what colors animals can see. What animals' eyes glow green at night, yeah. Deer eyes can sometimes glow green. I'm tired of this whole fucking, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. What animal has green glowing eyes? I'm way too invested in this. Ooh, there's a chart. It looks like it's saying that deer don't have green eyes. Could it be that this 4chaner is incorrect about information? No, that can't be right. It is the Google who is wrong. Anyway, these eyes were small and piercingly bright like two coals. As I got closer, I saw an enormous shadow imposed over the deer carcass. It was about waist high and pure black. Standing on all fours looking at me, its legs were thick. Not fatty like a bear's, but sinewy like a dog's, only much thicker. Attached to the legs was a massive pitch-black muscular torso and a powerful neck, easily holding the deer just off the ground. Throwing caution to the wind, I floored it. Any risks that might occur were surely lesser than whatever creature was staring right at me in my car. I whizzed past it, the whole encounter taking only a few seconds. I made it to my house several minutes later, and I ran inside and locked the door. The next day I drove to school along the same route. In daylight, I felt much safer, and I could try to catch a glimpse of whatever I had crossed paths with the night before. Driving past the same spot, I didn't feel the same sense of dread the night before. I began to feel somewhat relieved, until I saw the deer carcass. What had previously been a good-sized animal was now simply a head, a neck, and part of a rib cage. The rest was just gone, torn clean off. Coyotes can't do that. Vultures merely pick corpses, they don't eat bones. Did this man just say vultures don't eat bones? That's crazy. This guy's an idiot. And the bears around here are scavengers, which leaves me wondering, what else is in those woods along Snake Road? You sure fucking stretched that out. All for that to be like, oh, I saw a thing and it wasn't a deer, the end. Be me, 17 at the time. Stayed up with wholesome parent-mandated church friends till almost 4 a.m. Drumming, watching movies, eating a shitload of cold pizza. Absolutely awake, sober and unaltered. Get bored, decide to head home. 30-minute drive through fields and farmland to the suburbs. It's a clear night with a bright moon. I'm driving my old SUV, driving in silence, with no radio. Now, I have no idea if this is important or related at all, but along my route is an old abandoned 2-story farmhouse about half a mile from the road. On the road in front of it is a small bridge, under which runs a usually dry creek. The house was deserted after a fire burned most of the roof, and half of the top floor about 6 months earlier. I don't know what caused the fire, but anyway. As I approach the bridge near the house, the next part of the green text happens all within about 10 seconds as I drive towards and then past the bridge. The road turns a bit, and now my headlights are pointing towards the bridge. It's still distant, though. I notice something tall. I seem to remember there used to be a tree or something in that general area, so it doesn't strike me as odd. I keep driving closer. The figure appears to be a person coming up the embankment, but there's something off about them. I keep driving closer. I'm close enough to see the figure more clearly. My headlight is hitting it, and it's not a human. The figure is like a human, but everything's wrong. The figure is naked, and it's almost entirely gray. There are no features like genitalia. The creature's limbs are abnormally long and impossibly thin. Looking back, I am 100% certain it was not someone in a costume or a suit, because a human body cannot fit its limbs or neck into those proportions. Like you would expect, it has huge black eyes and no nose and an extremely small mouth. I'm strangely calm as I'm passing this thing, My brain isn't able to comprehend what I'm seeing. I'm looking it dead in the eye. It's standing on the edge of the road. There is nothing around it. No strings, no sticks. This is not some puppet. We're staring at each other as I drive closer. It's reaching its arms out to me. Its impossibly long fingers wiggling at me. Its tiny mouth is moving. It's trying to get my attention. It wants me to stop. I do not. I drive past the thing. I drive home in silence. I feel what I remember now as absolute terror. So much so that it broke me. I was so afraid that I felt nothing at all. Like true immediate trauma. I remember feeling like it was not safe to walk from the driveway to the house. But my body did so on its own, despite my mind begging it not to. I go straight to my room, and I fall immediately asleep. The next morning, it was like nothing happened. I didn't even remember the event. It wasn't on my mind at all. It took me 6 months before the memory came back to me. I think my brain was just incapable of dealing with an event that it could not rationalize. I try not to think about it because when I do, it makes me extremely uncomfortable. I can honestly say I haven't had any strange encounters since, and I'm 29 now. Very few people in my life know. I know that my description of the thing sounds like some generic gray alien trope, but I am 100% sure of how it looked. I truly believe it was an alien, though some religious friends have said it was a demon in an alien form. I often wonder what it wanted from me. Why was it trying to talk to me? Did it need help? Was it connected in some way to the burned house? I don't know, and I hope I never find out. Fuck green text. I was around 17 years old in South Carolina, driving up from Charleston to Dorchester for a party with a friend of mine named Kyle. I was the driver and he was a passenger. Now, I'd lived in South Carolina for 7 years, and I spent another 6 in Tennessee prior to that, and I was in love with the wilderness. Nothing creepy had ever happened in all of that time, regardless of how rural or backwoods I'd gotten. So, driving up there, the hour got late. We were on a stretch of lonely road with nothing but woods and swamp on either side of the road. No buildings, no houses, and no real civilization for around 30 miles ahead. And behind us. Conversation was typical 17-year-old dude conversation. Dude, we're gonna get so wasted, I haven't seen these guys in forever, so on and so forth. I have my eyes on the road, however, in order to make sure I don't slam into some random wildlife crossing by. With no lights, in the woods, at 1:30 in the morning, visibility was fairly shitty. As I'm talking, I spot something about 500 feet up the road, walking along the side of the pavement towards our car. As my mind is on driving and conversation, my first thought on the figure was, this is probably some hitchhiker, or maybe someone's car broke down. However, as soon as I heard how strange both of those possibilities sounded, I started to watch the figure more closely. 1:40 in the morning now, middle of the fucking woods, with no civilization for dozens of miles in either direction, and the road is one way. I haven't passed a car, or seen another car, in over an hour. Conversation slows down, and the figure gets closer. I realize something isn't quite right because it's way too tall, now that it's closer. I'm 5'10", and my friend was 6'1" and 245 pounds. But this thing had to have been 8 feet at least, and its body proportions were wrong. The arms dangled far below the hip, with humanesque hands with way too long fingers. I could not make out any claws, but who knows? It was dark. The head was bald. The skin was pale gray and white, like a maggot, and mottled brown splotches, which may have been dirt or natural coloration. It was all mixed in. The eyes were black and large, and reflected light in a predatory way when the truck's lamps shone on them. The legs were bent oddly at the knees, but were quite long nonetheless. Couldn't make out the feet, but the hands were humanish, so I presumed the feet were too. The worst part was the mouth. Imagine a human mouth where the lower jaw has been stretched and descended all the way down to the chest. The teeth were yellow and sharp. The mouth was red, but had no visible tongue lolling around, and conversation stopped dead. I flicked the high beams on as it seemed to be quickening pace as we approached, moving in a very jerky and haunting manner. and when the high beams hit it, it shrieked in a weird two-toned way and made the move across the road, which was bad because my reaction had been to slam on the accelerator in order to pass the thing by. We locked eyes as I approached, and I introduced that gray-skinned motherfucker to a Ford F-150 doing about 70. When we collided, everybody screamed. Me, Kyle, Stretch Armstrong, and that thing made a pleasantly solid thum upon impact with the right corner of the hood and bumper. The shrieking stopped abruptly and turned into a squalling moan, and the impact sent it hurtling into a tree on the roadside. We kept going. There was no blood and only minor damage to the truck. I love steel. As we passed it, I told him to check our 6, and he said, "It's down. I can see its legs. It's not moving." I nodded once and stayed quiet for another 5 minutes. My friend, who was used to being a badass and playing high school football on the D-line, was visibly shaken. Yeah, man, because he saw a fucking monster. Fuck, that gets me so annoyed. He was in his seat and he was hyperventilating. I drove the rest of the way in silence. I got to the party, said hi so I could get through the door. Then I went up and locked myself in the bathroom. I looked myself in the mirror, and I probably cried for about 15 minutes. No clue what road. I live in Miami now, and I'm 27. I don't really care whether anyone believes me. I know what I saw, and I saw it way before I even ever heard of a fourchan or knew what a skinwalker was. I was a huge nerd, very much into D&D and other crap, so part of my issue was trying to figure out what fucking monster I even saw. It didn't seem to match any description of anything I'd ever heard of. All I knew was, it wasn't human, and we gave it a black eye in exchange for a dented hood and scratched paint. So, I knew it was solid, and not some kind of ghost or hallucination. I actually decided to share this story because some of the skinwalker posts that I've seen have mentioned them as being gray-skinned and naked men, which syncs up exactly with what I saw. It's actually comforting to know other people have encountered them, and I hope it comforts the people who have encountered them to know that they don't seem to enjoy being broadsided by 3 tons of steel at 70 miles per hour. It's not my story, but my Uncle Nick used to tell us this as kids to scare us. Be Uncle Nick, 1983, 17 years old, working at a fast food joint in a small town in Ohio. Be working late shift on a summer night, till about 11:30 p.m. or so. Ends up getting off an hour later due to how busy it was. Drives home in a beat-up hand-me-down that he, my dad, and Grandpa fixed up. Takes a shortcut through some back road back to the house that he lived at with the family. Slam his foot on the brake when his big-ass deer comes bolting across the road. The deer isn't the only thing to appear in the headlights. Out comes this big hair-covered thing, as he called it, leaping down onto the road. Holds a 5-fingered man-hand, as Nick calls it, up to its face. This creature is built like a fucking quarterback and a pro wrestler combined. Today, it would be considered an absolute unit. It's about a few seconds long encounter, but he manages to see its face for 1 second. It's wolf-like. He sees the wolf-like face and backs up and barrels the fuck out. Fast forward some time later. I'm 6. Uncle Nick is now 41. My little sister is 8. It's Halloween. He tells us he saw a real werewolf. Years later, I'm 16 in high school. Look up werewolf sightings out of boredom. Remember Uncle Nick's story. Learn about the dog man. Tell him what I looked up. He still tells the story every Halloween. Go on a long drive with Buddy. Get to the Bible Belt section of the drive. There's no stations on except Fire and Brimstone Christian on radio. Listen to it anyway. We're drinking coffee from a thermos. Smoking, laughing, life is good. Glance out at road. See a person lying in the road. Yell out for Buddy to look. He spills coffee and twists wheel. Person had brown on and blended in. It's too late for brakes. George swerves halfway off the road. Goes up small embankment. Dirt and dust spray into the air. Come back down onto the road violently. Front right tire gets back on the gravel. And we come to a screeching halt. We both bumped our heads inside the cab. There's no blood, but we're rattled. Get out of truck to check out tire. Suddenly remember the dude lying in the road. Head back towards the spot. No streetlights. Flashlight is in truck. Go back to get it. Hear George yell that the guy has gotten up, and he's running away. George has a small pen light aimed across a culvert into a forest of dead trees. I shine the large light and see the same brown color crashing through the dense dead brush. It looked like a tall, thin man with a brown cloth folded around his face to conceal his identity. His clothes looked rather like a rough fur or gunny sack. He ran maybe 100 yards into the trees and then stopped. I got a cold, deep fear in my stomach as the dust from our skid filled my mouth and nose. Everything fell silent as we both listened intently. George yells out to the man, "Hey, you okay?" The thin man answers. He just screams a blood-curdling scream back at us from the woods, like an animal caught in a trap. We both looked at each other in the flashlights. We turned and, without a word, sprinted back to the cab, jumped in and locked the doors, and we floored it out of there. My guess was he was trying to kill himself. He moved too fast to be a drunk passed out on the road. George says that it was an Indian trying to make us crash to rob our truck. I didn't unlock my door until we crossed the Oregon border.